I'm Katina England.
Hi, and I'm Ellen Peguero.
Welcome back for another episode of
A Good Show.
On this episode of A Good Show, we'll continue the discussion on feminism and masculinity and the design of the family according to God's perfect design. And
Yes.
on the show today, we have the honor of having with us the Honorable Reverend Sylvia Wilks. See that?
Yes,
So now you know
yes.
exactly what honor is supposed to look like and where it's supposed to be bestowed.
That's right.
So, Reverend
Wilks.
So,
Yes.
Reverend Wilks, you have a bachelor's in theology with a minor in guidance counseling, a master of science in marriage and family studies. You have your doctorate in strategic leadership, and you're also the founder of Pure Gold Ministries. Tell us a little bit about Pure Gold Ministries.
Pure Gold Ministries International, for those who remember Evangelist Gloria Wilks.
I do very well.
I know she was good. I know she was your good friend.
Yes.
She was quite big on family, quite big on young people and the community.
Yes.
She served the community well. And her albums was on Pure Gold. Her favorite scripture was on, Job. Thou shalt come forth as pure gold, his life story. And it kind of resonated with her life story and how she came forth as pure gold and what she did. And so the ministry is Pure Gold Ministries International, to carry on her legacy, to carry on the things that she was passionate about in terms of family seminars and anything to do with the community and serving the families.
Beautiful way to continue to honor such a great lady. Yes.
Last week, Reverend Sylvia, and I will go back and forth between first name and last name.
Sure, certainly.
But last week, Pastor Ellen and I did our session on our episode on feminism.
Yes.
Because we're doing a series on the family and family structure. How did God intend it
The
to
family.
operate? What's it supposed to look like? What are the mechanics of family? And so I think that there are very few in the country who are qualified to speak on the topic more than you.
Well,
I didn't say that right, actually. I think there are a few in the country who are qualified in the area in which you are to speak on the topic.
okay.
So, welcome to the conversation. Now, last week we left off talking about how feminism was displacing men.
Yes.
You want to cover some of those areas?
Yes. We were talking about, how women have come to a place now where we feel, and I say we just because we're women, but that does not apply to us, okay? I don't think so anyway. Where we are now believing that we don't need a man for anything. So basically we're displacing the male, and it's not God's intention.
Right.
It was God's intention for us, for the family to be mother, father, and to honor one another. And that's one of the things we want to, encourage people out there to do, or come back to that place where we recognize that the men deserves our honor and deserve to be respected and deserve to be recognized as the head of the family.
Right.
So
now, in all of this, though, we're not saying that women are less than men.
Of course
We're
not.
not saying that men are supposed to be held in some greater degree of honor than women are supposed to be held. We have done a tremendous job at beating men down, that you were saying last week on the show, Sis. We now have men to the point where they don't know whether or not to open the door for us. But we expect for them to step in and defend us from another male. Or even if we're caught in a fight with another female, and the boyfriend is standing there, and you say, well, why didn't you step in? And he said, I didn't know I was supposed to. Because you've told him all along that you are all this and don't need help from men. and they don't know whether to pull the chair out, hold the door open, come over and assist with changing our flat tires. You know, they don't know if chivalry is a good thing anymore, because we have done a really good job at saying that men are no good. We don't need men. We can do this all on our own. And so we have fractured masculinity to some degree. Now, of course, I know that we are all in agreement that women, until today, are still subjected to some horrible abuses.
Certainly, yeah.
And we are not for a moment even suggesting that it is okay for women to be abused.
Oh no.
Women should be belittled.
Absolutely not.
Are less than men, and that is not what it is that we are trying to say here on this show. But what we are doing is we are addressing the family structure and how it works best, and how it should be. Yes, thank you very much.
Right, and before we go off to you, I just want to bring back to the fact that, going along with what you just said, is that to understand that God created the male and the female to be compatible. Right. You know, to share into that. So God's intention for the family, you know, the family is supposed to be a place of refuge and security with equal respect for the male and for the female. But I'd like to hear you.
I like what you said last week. I listened to that, and you made that clear. You know, when in Scripture it said male, female. You know, it goes further and explain like how, you know, the Bible talks about filling the earth. You know, it talks about the different things that took place, and then, you know, so it's kind of like I made men and women, but here's what happened. I realized that, you know, Adam was lonely. Yes. And then, you know, this is how I created Eve from Adam. But it wasn't like she was an afterthought.
That's right.
The thought was always there.
Yes.
You know, so that's how, because I read, why do people not realize that? You know, I've created male and female, and the story.
Yes.
You know, and so when I listened to that last week, I was like, oh, okay then. I don't have to say anything about that. I mean, you have to start with the foundation, innit? And you know what, the truth is, on my way here today, I thought of my doctoral studies, which was in strategic leadership, and I thought of the whole idea of headship and the epitome of leadership, which is servant leadership, which is serving. You know, Jesus told the disciples, don't lord over like the other leaders are. You know, serve the people. I came to serve, not to lord over people. And I thought of the fact that in terms of leadership, people have thought that the kind of leader is this autocratic, authoritarian individual that lords over people, and that has transcended into the homes, right? Yes. And the unfortunate truth is that's where a lot of abuse has taken place, because of people's idea of headship being that, which was not necessarily the intention. And when the headship is wrong, the submission is wrong, because you cannot be submitting to abuse. You cannot be submitting to individuals who are not empowering you, not taking care of you as it should be. Correct. You know? So I thought of, why is it then that persons have a problem? And I said, you know what? If you don't respect the leadership of God, if you don't respect God as head of us human beings, you will never come to a true understanding of headship or leadership on earth. So it's an understanding. Okay, who designed this? That's right. God. You know, who authored this? Who defines this? God. If you decide that you want to define it yourself, you're human that is now taking the place of God. Yeah, and so what He has designed, you're coming up with your own thing.
And that's why the abuse then becomes so prevalent in families. You know, because if we would do Ephesians 5:22-25, let me read, it says, submitting one to the other in fear of the Lord. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. In verse 23, he says, for the husband is the head of the wife, as also Christ is the head of the church, and he's the savior of the body. Therefore, as the church submits to Christ, let the wife be to their own husbands, and 25, and husbands, love your wives just as Christ loves the church. So Christ is the head of the man. Man is head of the woman. But what is happening, that love is coming from God to the husband, to the wife, to the children. So you have this relationship and this security in this family. Then now the love is going back the other way. It's coming now from the children to the wife, to the husband, on to Christ. And everybody recognizes they are due respect, honor. You know, none is less than the other. They are equal partners.
There's a harmony with headship and submission.
There's a great,
It's similar to leadership, and I'm going to piggyback on my training and my studies, my doctoral studies. There's a harmony between leadership and followership. There's not a lot of studies on followership right now. What that is, you might be the leader in a particular context, right? And I might be the follower in that context. But there's a mutual agreement. When we come to the table, we come to agreeing on whatever goal and objective that is. In the family, it might be to raise our children, etc. We have a mutual thing. So it's not you having more of the responsibility and I having lesser, but you might you might be the one making the decisions. I might be carrying it out, but we have a mutual reason why we are together in whatever context it is. So it's an equal thing. A lot of people miss that. So when you're a follower in whatever context, especially in the workplace, you're asking questions, you're challenging things because it's not subscribing to the objectives and the goals for which we come together for. In the family, same thing, right? It's about role. And if you don't understand your role and your responsibility and where you are in that context, something is going to go wrong. So that's what's happened in a lot of families. The woman wants to take the place of the man, and the man don't know where he's supposed to be as relates to what he's supposed to do, and that's what we found happening with this whole idea of feminism, the swerve off the road kind of perspective to the whole situation.
You know, go ahead.
Radical feminism, as I like to kind of keep it in context. Me personally, I prefer to keep it in context. The one that ran off the road. This is where you see a lot of single motherhood deliberate because she doesn't want to be submissive to the child's father. And because of that lack of submissive refusal to submit, whatever it may be, that whether it's lack of or refusal, because she wants to play a role that's not hers to play, right? It leads to a broken family structure because man says, listen, I'm a man, I'm not going to be disrespected, I'm that child's father, and I am not going to let you treat me this way in front of the child because I'm not going to let you emasculate me. And he walks out the door. It's not that he doesn't want to be a part of the child's life. He doesn't want to be disrespected. And because of a lack of submission, she's not able to look at this and say, look, he loves me, but he wants me to respect him. Let me humble myself and respect him, especially in front of his child. Instead, the position that she takes is this: well, I am a woman and I am equal to you and I can do everything you can do. I can raise our child, plural, our child, on my own. And what that has done is it's just cut the child short 50% of the parenthood to which that child is entitled. And that child now stands a risk of being one of the 86% who ends up in prison. Right? Because of a mentality that is not conducive to a stable family structure, because you don't want the man to play the role that he's trying to play in the family. Now this is in the same situations, and I can tell you from personal experience, I've watched it in my neighborhood, and I've watched it many different, especially young people relationships. That is the same one who expects that man must bring money back for her, and he must protect her, and he must not let anybody say anything about her in the public, and he must defend her in each and every way. And although she has told him not to come back because she don't need him, she expects for him to be present, because she in her mind feels that she is Lord over him, because she's not she doesn't understand, let me use that word, doesn't understand what submission is about, and how submission leads to equal partnership in the home. And so he keeps his role, she keeps hers. Child has two parents, and we go through on a stable foundation and raise a good citizen, right? Not that, like we said in a earlier show, not that single parents haven't produced good children, right? But that's a less than 25% chance that you're going to, that child is not going to fall afoul of the law, and that it's actually going to graduate the grades that it's capable of graduating with.
May I add something to that?
You certainly may.
We know that circumstances alter cases, my mother would say, right? But when you purposefully seek out to make that your circumstance, that's where the problem is. So you have situations where people are married, partner dies, child is without one parent. We understand that. And there's different situations as well, divorce or whatever, that amends that situation, right? But I give you an example of a event I went to several years ago, when we started in Cayman, government started pushing women's rights and so forth in Cayman. I was at a town hall meeting, constitutional hall, and I was sitting in the back and I was listening to these ladies. And I remember distinctly, I will never forget, I forgot everything else anybody said, but I would never forget what this woman said. She said that we don't have a problem being in relationship with these individuals to have children, not necessarily because we want to stay with them, right? But we expect them to be able to fund the child, and take care of the child. But so I'm like, so you're saying that you are putting yourself in this situation just so that you can have a child, right, without the involvement of the father, purposefully, right, and still expect him to take care of the child. And he might think he was just having fun with somebody who was just having, but you knew what your intention was in the first place. So I'm like, you're creating a problem unnecessarily for your own selfish reason.
Own selfish, and also that, I mean, now you're putting an innocent child into this selfish rim,
right?
Where now you're now setting that child up for failure as they grow, because they think that's the norm. But I totally, that's mind blowing. But I want to say, I think the word submission frightens people, because they don't understand it in the context it was intended. It's not just submitting because he says I must do this and I don't want to do this. It is each partner, and I think you say that quite well, knowing what their roles are and respecting each other's roles, and as they, and they come together and realize how compatible they are, and they're submitting one to the other. They're not just submitting because you command that I submit, but we're doing it what God had said. When Genesis 2, when God said it was not good for man to be alone, so he made him a helpmate to help him. And in the same as he made that helpmate for the female, for the male, he made the male for the female. And if we can understand our roles and respect that, there would be less divorces, there would be less, abuse in families. And we would pass down that, where the good duplication would happen. The children would see that. They grow up, have their children, and they see that. I think when we had Madam Speaker on, she mentioned that, what she saw
from her parents
and her grandparents, that brought her into her relationship and being your sister-in-law. She saw it come from the other side of the family, that they saw that. I'm not saying that either family was perfect,
Right.
But we understand submission. One more thing before I give you all another chance to jump in here, is that
you could tell that we want to, right?
Yeah. Is oh, just lost a train of thought. You got to keep me going, but I'm going. A woman trying to wear the pants. Sometimes we get this confused. That's why sometimes even religiously we talk about women shouldn't wear pants. Well, we're not talking about the physical pants. You know, we're talking about you trying to take on a role that God never intended for you to take on.
Exactly.
Jump in here, ladies.
I have a word that I would like to use that we don't normally hear in this context, right? Intentional.
Yes.
I love that word.
I was on a forum recently, and the person asked me if I was married or if I had children. No, she asked me if I had children, and I said no, and I said I wouldn't do that unless I was married. And she's like, you know, I respect that. I said I could have decided years ago to have a child, you know, outside of marriage, but I'm like, I didn't want to do it that way. And a lot of people have like, I'm getting older, whatever. Yes. I want to, you know. I'm like, no, it has to come in that order, and I don't regret not making that decision. I don't regret all the decisions I've made where that's concerned. I'd rather if, you know, there were certain things I had, but I'm glad with the decisions I made. Intentional. When you partner up with somebody, are you intentional? Because my thing is, I've shared with a friend of mine when she was getting married. Are you going to maximize that individual's potential for his time on earth with the intention that he ends up on the right side of eternity? You know, is he going to do the same thing for you? Is he going to help you to be able to serve well while you're on earth with the intention that you will end up on the right side of eternity? And with the children as well. And so if you have that intention, you are going to make sure that that context is secured by marriage, and is secured by the way you treat each other in that context. You're going to empower each other, you're going to encourage each other, you're going to bless each other, so that you are being the best that you can be now and later on. You know, but people are not intentional. They're making, I call it, you're making your hormones run the show.
There you go.
You know?
And that intentionality, right? That's where we see the equal partnership playing out. Because we're looking at how we contribute to each other's lives and help each other to bring out the very best version of each other.
Yes.
So you can submit, like the follower, to the goals and objectives.
Correct.
And when you're talking about football, when we're supposed to be talking about netball, but wait, down at the goal and objective here. So I don't know if I can submit to that, because that's not a part of what we agreed to.
And you know, when there's a wholesome view of the family and you're working towards that goal of fulfilling that wholesome view, right? There can be those moments where there are disagreements.
Of course. Reasonable people disagree.
Yes.
Thank you. That's where you come up with this thing about, can we agree
to disagree? Yes.
Right? And when those moments come up, it's not an opportunity for you to find out who can argue the best. It's an opportunity for you to prove that you are the one who is most suited for compromise, a good compromise. Because let me just give you a simple example. If your husband says to you as the wife, sweetheart, you look fabulous in that dress, but I would prefer if you didn't wear it out tonight. You said, but you just said I look good in it. I said, yeah. And if you would wear it here in this bedroom, I would be super happy. But I don't want you to walk out the door with it, because I think it's a bit too short for my wife to be wearing. The proper response for that wife in that moment is to say, oh, you want to keep your trophy. You want to keep your treasure for yourself. And he says, yes, darling. And she says, well, I'm going to keep this dress on and I'm going to wear it in this bedroom all night tonight. Or I'm going to take this dress off because I want to go out. You said I could have dinner with the girls and we're going to go out, so I'm going to change the dress. he's not stopping you from going out.
Right.
He's asking you, please, let my wife be my wife and not the public's wife, right? And in that moment, you have the ability to be the perfect wife, to honor your husband's requests and to respect him. Now, this conversation you must come back on because we have to continue this conversation.
I want to say, Katina,
yes,
that there is Genesis 3:16.
Yes.
The woman wanting to control the husband.
Yes.
Right? And that is the epitome of what we are experiencing right now as it relates to feminism, swerving off the road, radical feminism.
Radical feminism. Well, folks, thank you so very much for joining us for this edition of A Good Show. This conversation is going to continue on, not only with Reverend Sylvia Wilks, but with other qualified experts who will be joining our panel to discuss the family structure. Thank you very much for joining us for this episode of A Good Show. Now, last week, Miss Susan Ebites from West Bay won the gift package from 7 Miles of Grace. But the first person who calls 922-6644 and say that they watched A Good Show on Sunday night will win 2 gift certificates for Stingray City compliments of Captain Marvin's. 922-6644. Now, here's how you can stay tuned for A Good Show.
Thank you for joining us, and join us again on Tuesday nights and Sunday nights on Cayman Life TV, channel 33 Logic. Look forward to seeing you. 7 p.m. Yes.
A Good Show is brought to you by the kind donations of private sponsors like yourselves and the support of companies such as Media Warehouse, 7 Miles of Grace, H. Philippi Bank's Attorney at Law, Dragonfly Cayman, and others. To become a sponsor, an advertiser, or to make a donation, email agoodshow@christian.ky.